Script here with another video. I want you to imagine you were a kid or an adult in the 1970s. Now, at this time, there had been a variety of science fiction films released going all the way back to 1902 with Jorge Méliès' Trip to the Moon. As the years went on, the sci-fi genre expanded with such films as the famous 1927's Metropolis. Conquest of Space, that came out in 1955, featured full-blown action scenes in space, and for its time was quite well done, but as we can see, this is a large step for the effect levels featured in the Star Wars of 1977. In 1968, 2001, A Space Odyssey was released and turned many heads with its stunning visuals and an interesting twist on organizing the plot around 3 acts. Also released in 1968, something more akin to a science fiction fantasy like Star Wars, was Barbarella. The genre was growing and changing, but nothing quite like Star Wars had been accomplished, although many of these films inspired and paved the way for the ideas and effects performed in Star Wars. Dark Star featured some well-done effects in 1974. And of course, Logan's Run in 1976, which applied the sci-fi fantasy genre completely. George Lucas drew inspiration from many of these examples, and especially from the 1940s Flash Gordon, as well as films from other genres like the samurai film The Hidden Fortress and the western The Searchers, all of which contributed to the story and look of Star Wars. All of this to say that the original 1977 Star Wars film and its 2 sequels, The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, brought the sci-fi as well as the fantasy genres to a new level. Years later, the creator of Star Wars, George Lucas, decided to re-release his original Star Wars trilogy with some altered deleted scenes, as well as changes to many of the visual and audio tracks within pre-release scenes from the films. He felt the originals didn't live up to his initial vision due to the lack of special effect technology that then existed in 1997, the year in which he released his alteration. This was 2 years before the release of the first of his prequel films, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and in this video we will discuss the changes that were made, how effective they were, and also if they were necessary or, put another way, superior to the original releases. All of this while imagining seeing the originals at the time within the context of the day. Now, right off the bat, we see a distinct difference in the color. The special editions featured less grain and more shadow effect, but they also incorporated a slight bluish hue really throughout the entire film. Personally, I almost kind of like the grain of the original more. Now, this video isn't going to be focusing on the color, but more the added scenes and animations, but this ought to be mentioned as it was one of the factors that led to the special edition releases. The next significant difference is this shot after R2-D2 and C-3PO have an argument and separate after landing on Tatooine. George expanded the scope of the environment, added a detailed sunset, and reddened the eyes of the Jawas. All things are definite improvements. Necessary, though? Did the Jawas really need red eyes? This shot of the Jawas carrying R2 to the Sandcrawler is a massive improvement in not just the color, but the depth the change in the sky creates. This, for me, was the first point where I'm like, okay, I can see why George Lucas would want to improve this. And the darker night sky also tells the viewer that much more time has passed and the Jawas have traversed quite a distance to get back to the crawler. While the Empire is looking for the escape pod, this is where a heavy dose of CGI and extra footage was added. As we see, it aligns with the old shot, but also adds another CGI dewback to the shot. For me, there was just too much going on in the added shot, almost muddying it. The addition of the second dewback to the original shot I felt was okay to add, but none of this was necessary. Right after that, they created an entirely new shot of the Sandcrawler. Much better in many ways, as you can see. Necessary, no, but again with this one, I can see where George Lucas saw so much more to this shot. Later we have the shot from outside Obi-Wan Kenobi's home that was completely changed as well. I get it, it does look better, although the scale of the speeder looks a little large. As they enter Mos Eisley, so much of this is just unnecessary. I like the earlier shots that added context with the sandcrawler, but this is just a lot of stuff that's just pointless in my opinion. Sadly, in the original film, there's a shot of the Wolfman in Mos Eisley Cantina that was replaced with a different alien. Then we get another needless do-back, and of course, how could we forget the infamous Han shot first, which of course should never have been changed, and to this day I still have no idea why they felt this was needed. It changes Han's character in the sense that we saw him grow from the scoundrel to the good man, but with this change he already has an ethic of shooting in defense rather than blasting Greedo like the scoundrel he is. Another pointless droid floating around. Before the gang leaves Tatooine, George Lucas added the formerly deleted scene with Jabba the Hutt. Obviously, we can see why it was cut, as George Lucas clearly had a different and far better idea for Jabba, which we see here. But, for me, this entire scene was totally unnecessary. It was really cool to find out in Return of the Jedi that the Jabba character all these guys keep talking about is this giant space slug. New viewers just see him right away in A New Hope, and it kind of diminishes the surprise. They added this little clip of the Falcon taking off and then changed the direction. The clip looks cool, but certainly not necessary. Of course, the explosion of Alderaan was changed dramatically. Yes, the color is certainly better, and the explosion is pretty good as well. Not sure it was needed, though, any more than the lightsaber changes. Some very clear pre-CGI versus CGI changes to the Millennium Falcon approaching Yavin 4. I mean, again, it looks good. Same thing with the X-Wing squadrons leaving to attack the Death Star. Looks good, but not really something needed. Added shots and ships added to existing shots. That's pretty much at various points throughout the Death Star fight. Of course, the explosion of the Death Star was changed. There's also some things I didn't mention for time's sake. For example, Leia's message to R2. When revealed to Luke, George Lucas used wider shots throughout the scene and sharpened and tinted the hologram blue. Unnecessary, but certainly better to look at. And some of the color changes and shot changes really do improve the look of the film at times. The big question is, were any of these things necessary, and does a lot of it take away rather than add? Let me know in the comment section, and also let me know if I am missing anything. For me, overall, I can see why he went through some of these things, but I don't think they're necessary. Having watched the original back again, it still holds to this day, no question about it. Yes, there's a couple shots where you're like, well, that's a little bit corny, but at the same time you go, well, it's 1977. And in 1977, this was an incredible special effects feat. If you like this content, guys, please like and subscribe. It always helps the channel. And check out any of my other Star Wars content on my channel as well as some of the other stuff I talk about. And have yourselves a really good day.